Hello friends, my name is Sarang. So today we'll develop REST APIs using this Gin Web Framework, which is written in Golang and it is 40 times faster than other frameworks. And if you need the performance and a good productivity, you will love Gin Framework. So that is what written in the official GitHub page of this framework, and we'll be developing the REST APIs using same and we'll also do a CRUD operations using MongoDB. So by this video, you will understand how to develop REST APIs using Gin and how to do a CRUD operation using MongoDB. Okay, so before you start looking into the video, you should be familiar with the basic concept of Golang. You should be familiar with the interfaces, struct, then slices. Okay, so if you're familiar with all this basic concept of Golang, then you can find this video easy, and you can also start building the REST APIs using this fastest framework. Okay, so before we start digging into the implementation of the REST API using Gin, so I would like to show you what we're going to build. We're going to build 5 APIs, one post, two get, one patch, and the delete. The post API will have the payload in this way: name, age, address, or simple user information, and we'll save it to the database. So I'll send, and this particular user information has been saved, and I can also get the particular user information using get request. I have to pass the name of the user, Sarang, and I will get the user information. I can also get or update the particular user information if I want to update the user information of Sarang. I will replace or I will update the age with, let's say, 70. I'll be able to do that. See success, and you can see that that information has been updated 70. Okay, and we can also get all the users. So since we have only one user now, so I will add one more user with the name dev problems. Okay, that user has also been added. So you can use get all API to get all the user information. So there are two Sarang user and one dev problems. So I will also able to delete the one of the users. So this is delete. Okay, you just have to pass the name of the user, and I'll be able to delete the user, and I'll do the get all. Now that dev problem user is deleted. So all these things we'll be doing using a Gin and MongoDB. So let's get started. So I have the VS Code open. So I have a folder with the name go_yt, and we will be first creating a file go.mod file, which is the namespace of your project. So we'll write a command to create that file, which is go mod init, and I will give the name of the namespace as example.com sarang apis. Okay, so we have the file created. It has no dependency right now, so we'll add the Gin dependency, since that framework will be used to create the REST API. So it is github.com Gin Jonic Gin. Okay, so let's wait for it to fetch all the necessary thing, and we'll also add the Mongo driver. So because we're gonna create the REST APIs, CRUD, we're also gonna create the CRUD operations. So the name would be go.mongodb.org/mongo driver. Okay, so now we have all the necessary dependency added. So we'll be creating our REST APIs using a typical MVC framework type. So we'll be creating directories like controllers, services, and models. So I've created this folders. Okay, and I'll create a main.go file which will have the main function and the package called main. Okay, so right now we'll not do anything here. First, we'll create our data object, which is a user. Okay, I will write the package as in models, same as the folder name. The package and the folder name should be same. And I will create a user struct, and this struct would have fields like name, age, and it will also have a reference to other struct which is address. So I will create that as well, address struct, and this will have state, city, and pin code. Okay, now let's also create the alias or the JSON way representation of this particular field, which is name. And since we're also gonna deal with MongoDB, so the name would be username in the MongoDB. Okay, so I've written in the bson because Mongo supports bson, and I will write here age, and in the bson I will write user age. You can write anything you want here as per your standards, and here I will write address. Bson would be user address. Okay, and same goes for this thing for address struct. In the bson I will write state. Okay, sorry, I have to do it like this. Here it's gonna be city, and in the bson also will write as a city. Here I missed the colon, and for pin code we'll write the same thing, pin code. Okay, so this is the JSON way of this particular property. You can think this as an annotation, which is an alias for this particular field. Okay, so now we have created our data object. Now let's go to the service and create service files. Okay, I will write as user service dot go. So here I will create a interface which will help us to define the service contracts, okay, or API contracts. I will name it as a user service, and it is an interface. Okay, we have to implement the methods that we'll write, and we'll be implementing using struct. But let's first define the API contracts, model.user, and it will return error. Okay, if there is error while saving in MongoDB, will return that error. Okay, and get user will be one of the contract where we'll pass the username, and we will get the corresponding user in the response. Okay, and get all is means get all the user present in the MongoDB. So this is gonna be a slice which will contain user objects. Okay, and one more is update user. Here we will pass the data of the updated user object, and it will also return error if there is any while saving into MongoDB. And then we will create a delete API, which will pass again the username, and we will return the error if there is any error. Okay, so these are the API contracts that we have, and we'll implement each functions, okay, using a struct. Now let's create the implementation class, service.impl.go. It is also in the service package, and let's it's gonna be a struct. Okay, so let's create that first. So type user service impl struct. Okay, and this struct will have the user collection object, which will be of type mongo.collection, and it's a pointer because we will get the object and we will point to that object. So that is that's the way. Okay, and we will also have the context. I will explain you why we need this context later, but first let's first implement all of these functions that we have written in the interfaces, and this particular struct will implement all of this. So let's create a receiver function which will help us to create the function of type receiver, and the first method is create user, which will take user, and if there is an error, it will return the error. Let's not focus on the implementation now. We will come back to this. So for now, we'll return nil, and I'll create one more receiver function. You user service impl, and this will be a get user, which will take the username and return the particular user object. For now, we will just return nil nil. Okay, and let's create the rest of the function. Get all, and this will return the models user, return nil. Okay, now I think we are left with two other function, which is update user and delete user. So let's quickly write that as well. User service impl, so it is update user, models user, and it will return error if while saving to Mongo, if we get any errors, we'll return that. Okay, and we are left with the last one, which is delete user. Okay, so here we'll receive the string, okay, which will hold the name of the user that we need to delete. Okay, so hang on with me, guys. Everything will make sense. We are just creating the structure of the project. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we have to also create the okay, there is some issue here. Wait just a second. What is this? Packet services in the go list. Found packet services and services in Golang packet expected services. Okay, so we have to match the folder name. That is what the error was, and that should be context. So let's start. Actually, there was a dependency issues. So what I've done is I've added the dependency again, and now it seems all the errors have gone, and now we are getting a warning here that this particular properties have been unused. So we have to initialize these properties, and how we're gonna do is we're gonna write a function which will act like an constructor, and for this we will pass the user collection. of type mongo.collection, and we'll also pass the context object, and we'll return the interface user service. So we're gonna return the interface, but we will create the implemented class, which is user service impl. We'll pass the address. So user collection, and this would be context. So now I'm getting errors saying that get all type of method. Okay, the implementation of this particular contract had a get all with this, and we have a different return type. So it is saying that it is not uh, getting compatible with the methods that we have defined here. Now it is fine. Okay, the signature should be same. That is what it is telling. When we created this function, it was denying to create an object because all the functions signatures were different. Sorry, not all, only for the get all. Okay, so now we have created a kind of a structure for this particular user service IMPL. Now let's work on the controller side. So what I'm gonna do is I'll create a file user controller dot go, and this will be of package controllers. Okay, now the controller will also be a type of struct. So user controller struct, and this will hold the user service. I will make it as a public user service services dot user service. Okay, as you have noticed that in the controller we have the reference of user service, and in the user service we have the reference of Mongo collection. Okay, so we are injecting those objects. Okay, because this is what we do in the typical MVC uh, in a architecture that will create the folders, and we'll keep on injecting the objects that we need. Okay, in different classes. So since the service layer is going to interact with the database layer, so it has a database object over there, and user controller will interact with service, so it will have the user service reference. Okay, so the constructor also would have the controller will also have you should also have a way to initialize the services. So we'll create a constructor user controller, and we'll return the user controller with the past user service. Okay, we have the struct and the constructor. Okay, now we have to create the methods. So from the controller we will define the routes, and the routes will call these methods which is present in the service IMPL. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll copy all these methods and we'll paste it in a controller. Okay, so here there won't be any such return types in the controller way. Okay, the controller will not have such return type, so I'm removing this. Okay, what we're gonna pass here is a gin context. So I will write here ctx gin dot context. This is what we passed here, and this should be user controller, and I will write here UC. And for now what I'm gonna do is I'll write JSON 200 and some nil or empty string for now. Okay, the context, this particular context object, gin.context will hold the information about the request that we're going to send, and the response will be sending using this method called JSON. So that's what we have done over here. So I will create that thing in the next. So just keep this thing for now, and I'll copy. this context for every route functions. So this functions in the controller will be acting as a handler, or you can tell as a route functions for the routes that we will define in a moment. Okay, and copy these things, and this will be UC. Okay, so let's now define the routes. So for that, I will create a method, a receiver method. So let's create user controller register user routes. Okay, and we will group all the user routes. For that, what we're gonna do is we have to get the object of gin route group. Okay, I will explain you what we are doing here is we are just grouping all the user routes under a name called user. So we are writing a group, and this will be user. Okay, a kind of base path we are building it. So now let's write user route dot, let's write post. Okay, so when we hit this URL user create, okay, we're gonna call the create user function. Okay, and the create user function will get this gin.context object, and this object will hold all the request header data, and in the same object we have to return the response using this JSON method. Okay, in the same way we will write the other routes. Okay, so there will be two get, one is get all and another one is get user, correct? So for this I will write get slash name, because this is the parameters that I will send it in the URL mentioning the name of the user, and will get the particular user object. So this one get user, so I will change this to get user. Okay, and the other one is get all, where we'll get all the user information present in the database. So we will write get all, and here we have patch, which is an update user. So if we hit the endpoint with the update, so we'll write update user. Okay, and we'll also create one more, which is delete, and this will delete user. Okay, so these are the routes that we have created. Okay, so let's start writing the logic of interacting with the database first. Okay, because that is important, that how we're going to interact. So in the service, let's go to the service layer, and let's create a user. Okay, let's see how we can create a user. So let's look at the function signature is we'll get the user in the request, and we'll add that directly into the MongoDB, correct? So let's write u dot, we have a user collection object, and we have initialized that user collection in the constructor. Using that, we will perform one insert one that will pass the context ctx and the incoming user, and this insert one will return insert one result in error. So I'm not interested in the insert one result, so I will write underscore for that, and I will write error. Okay, I have created a variable with the name error. If there is an error, we are returning it. Okay, so this is the logic of inserting a user. Okay, in the controller, what we're gonna do is we'll call this particular user service uh, method of creating a user. So this is the one. Let's give me a second. So this particular gin.context, this particular variable ctx will hold the user information. So let's first create the let's first declare the user sorry, the user variable, and we will, whatever the user information that we get in the request, we'll add it in this particular variable. So let's write that. So context dot should bind JSON. Okay, it should be capital. Okay, and we'll pass the address of this particular variable. And what we're gonna do is we will check if there is any error while binding. So I'll create one variable error error. Okay, and this error, if it's not nil, what I'm gonna do is I will return a response in the same context object. I will send the status as a bad request. No, it's not bad. It's bad request because we are not able to bind that, and the response would be uh, message string, and the value, it will be the error that we'll get while binding. Okay, and if we get this, we'll just return it. Okay, so whatever the user object that we get in a request, we are binding it into this particular variable, and if there is any error, the error object will not be nil, and we will pass on the bad request status, and we'll pass on the message. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is, if there is no error while binding, so we will call the user service create user method, and we'll pass the address of this particular user object. Okay, and if the error is not equal to nil, I will again do the same thing. Okay, now this time the status should be bad gateway, because there is a that's a that's a error while saving it in a MongoDB, so it should be a bad gateway. Okay, if everything works fine, if there is no such thing, okay, so we'll write HTTP status okay, and we will pass the message as success. So this would be success. Okay, so what are we doing is, whenever we get a request for this particular endpoint create, we'll call the create user function with the context object, and this particular context will have the user object. We are binding it in user variable, or and if while binding, if there is any error, we'll send the bad request, and if there is no, we'll call the create user function, which is present in the user IMPL. And here we are interacting with Mongo and inserting the data of user that we get in a request. And while doing that, if there is any error, the error err variable will be holding the error message, and will return that. Okay, and if it's not nil, definitely we have to return the bad gateway status code and the message that this error variable holds. And if there is no error, we will send HTTP OK and the message success. Okay, so this was for the create user. Okay, now let's write for the get user. So let's go to the IMPL. Okay, now the get user will have the parameter name, which is dynamic. Okay, so first we have to get this particular name from the endpoint. So will get that. So how we gonna do is var user. I'm declaring one variable, and here what I have to do is I have to pass the name here, correct? So in the controller, what I'm gonna do is I will write the username as ctx dot param name. Okay, and I will pass this. Is there any error object return? No. And what I'm gonna do is I will write uc dot user service dot get user name. Okay, now let's complete the implementation of this. So now I'm the user IMPL. So here I have to write a query where we are querying based on the username that we get in a request. So we have to write a Mongo query, which is bsun.d bsun.e key should be name and value should be the name that we get. Okay, so there is this everything is perfect. So basically this line represents if you want to do such kind of Mongo query like db dot collections name dot find, okay, name something like dev problems. If you want to do such kind of query, you have to you have to write in this way. Okay, so you can also go into this thing and read the documentation that D is an order representation of the bson document and all these things. Okay, so now let's write a logic to get the user. So user collection dot find one, and here we'll pass the context and query, and then what we'll do is if we get the user, we will decode that and give it to this user variable. And while decoding, if there is any errors, we will return that error and user. So this is the logic of getting a particular user from the MongoDB. Okay, now let's go to the controller and finish that part. So here we will receive user error from the user service. And again, if there is any error, we will return this thing, bad gateway. If everything as expected, we will return the user. So there should be a user object. Okay, this is the get user. I hope you understand the implementation. And one thing that I missed out here is in every I have written context here, correct? In every Mongo interaction or Mongo API, I'm passing this context because this context is helpful if you want to perform the operation within a certain period of time. Let's say you want to find one user in just 5 to 10 seconds, and if what this particular operation takes more than 10 seconds, then using this context object, you can cancel the operation and send a response saying that it took a lot of time. So using this context, uh, you can do a lot of things, setting the time that how much time it should take for this particular option to complete. If it's not, you can cancel. You can use this thing in a production, but now we are not gonna initialize the context in a way that it should be used in a production. Okay, so I'll show you that when we are writing in a main file. Here right now we have just created the files and writing the logics, but we have not initialized the user service. As you can see, we have created a constructor, but we never created the object so of the user controller, but we'll do that in a main.go file once we complete the APIs here. So we have written for the get user and for create user. Let's write it for update user and delete user quickly because they are pretty much same like create user. So for update user, when the user hits endpoints for update or delete, the particular method would be called. Okay, so what we're gonna do is first we have to, for update user, we are gonna pass the updated user information in the request. So first we have to get that thing. So what I'm gonna do is user models dot user. Okay, and I will copy the same thing. If there is an error while binding, we will return the bad request and return from this function. Okay, if there is no such thing, we will call the user service update method and pass the address of the user object. Okay, and if there is any error that we get from MongoDB, we will return that as a bad request or bad gateway. Okay, if there is no such thing, what we're gonna return here is write http okay and return success. Okay, now let's go to the IMPL and implement same for the update users. So in the update, we have to first find the particular user and then update the particular user information. So first we'll write a filter query. So the filter would be like finding the user by the username. So that's what we will do. I think that we have already written here, correct? So let's copy this. Okay, here it's gonna be user dot name. Okay, so I think in the BSON we have written username, user age, address. Okay, so this should be user underscore name, and this should also be user underscore name. So we have written the filter thing. We'll filter the user by the name, and then if we found the user, we'll update it, correct? So for update, we'll write same thing, bson.d, bson.e, and here we'll write key as an setting the values, and the value should be bson.d, and here we'll update the values. So they're gonna be three bsons here. Since there are three fields in the user object, so we have to update those three fields here. So write like this. Okay, so the first one would be key should be user name, and value should be user dot name. Okay, and let's copy this and change only the required thing, username, and sorry, this should be for address. It should be user address, and this should be address. Okay, and this should be the user age, and just write age. Okay, so this two things we have to pass it in a update one function of user collection update one. So first we'll pass the context and filter update, and we'll get the result of the updated, and we're not interested to get the error because we'll find if there is any match count. That means we have updated the user. If it's not equal to, sorry, 1, then we'll return errors saying that no match document found for update. Okay, so this thing, and we'll return nil if there is no error. Okay, if this thing is, if the match count is greater than 1, okay, or equal to 1, okay, then we'll send no errors. That means we have updated the user. Okay, so I think the controller side also we have done for the update user. Yeah, so let's now do it for deleting the user. So the deleting user also would be same like get user, because we will get the parameter here. We have to change this to uh, name, correct? We have to get the name from the endpoint. So we'll write var uh, username ctx param, and it should be name, and u dot user service dot delete user. We'll send the address of the username, and we'll return error. If the error is not equal to not equal to null, we'll send the bad gateway, and we'll sell the particular error information. If everything works as expected, we'll write http status okay, and giving the success message. Okay, and let's implement the IMPL side, user service side. Okay, here what we're gonna do is here again we have to write a filter logic, because we have to first find the particular user. So this should be name. Okay, and then we will find and delete that particular user. User collection dot delete one. This is the one. Here we'll pass context, comma the filter query. Okay, and again we will get the result. Okay, if result is same, we'll copy this thing. If there is no match count equal to 1, then we have not found the user to delete. Okay, I think pretty much done on this side. So we have implemented 4 queries for now. 4 APIs: create, create, get, update, and delete. The get all would be a little tricky. So, but let's implement that quickly. On the controller side, what are we expecting on the get all is we will we have to get all the users that are present in the MongoDB, correct? So on the controller side, we will get a list of users and errors. If there is any error, uc.userservice.getAll. If there is any error, we will send the bad gateway. Pretty much same. If there is no such thing, we'll send the users, and that should be the HTTP status okay. Okay, here what are we getting? This is undefined, has no field or match count. Okay, so why is this? There is some VS Code issue as well, I guess. There should be okay, no, not sorry, my mistake. It should be deleted count. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the get all, and here we have to deal with cursor and all. It's because we have to deal with cursor, because we have to get the users one by one from the database. So let's first create the slice object, which will be useful cursor error, and this would be u dot user collection user collection dot find. Okay, sorry, just a second. It should be find, and here I have to pass the context and write the logic to find all the user. So if we write just bsond, that means we need all the document that is present in the Mongo. Okay, for particular collection. If there is any error, if error is not equal to nil, return nil and error. Okay, if there is no such, then we have to iterate the cursor and use this next method and pass the context. Okay, and here var user models, it should be capital, and that should we are decoding it, that particular user, and saving it in this user variable. If while decoding, if there is any error, again same thing, and if there is no such errors, then we will append this particular user in the user slides. We have to pass the address because we are using the pointers, so we are saving the address of all the user. Okay, and after saving this, we have to also close the cursor. Okay, so for that we have to write if we get uh, error somewhere. Okay, error while iterating it. So this method will capture the error for this particular cursor while iterating. If there is any error, this particular variable will have the error information, and if the error is not equal to nil, then we have to return this thing. Okay, and if everything works fine, we will close the cursor by passing the context information. Okay, and if the length of the user slice is still equal to 0 after iterating, that means there is no information or there is no user in the database. So return nil errors dot new. We will write documents not found, because after iterating, if we still don't get any documentation and the length is 0, that means there are no documents in the Mongo. Okay, I think this was the toughest one, I guess, since we have cursor and all, but it's very easy if you see the code again and again. Okay, now we have completed the all the packages. Now the only thing left is to initialize everything and start the Gin server. That would be again little tricky, but bear with me and you will understand everything. So first I will define all the required variables. So I would need a gin.engine variable, because this the gin.engine is the consider this as a base or server for the Gin framework. So I would require this. I will also require user service. So in all the other packages, I have just defined everything. Now I will initialize everything uh, in the main file, controllers dot user controller. This is context, which is of type context dot context. This will be user collection, and this will be of type mongo dot collection, and I would also require mongo client and mongo dot client error of type error. Okay, so these are the variables that will that we have declared, and we'll initialize this in a init function. So context would be context dot to do. So we are not dealing with any timeouts. So the to do will create a simple context object with no cancellation thing inside. and we'll write connection Mongo connection logic, which will get from the options dot uh, client dot apply URI MongoDB localhost. Oh, sorry, I think should be slice localhost 27017. Okay, and I will initialize the Mongo client error using mongo dot connect. We'll pass the context and Mongo connection. Okay, if there is any error, if error is not equal to nil, we will just close the application by passing the error in the console. If there is error while pinging the Mongo DB, so what we'll do is before we start any operation, we will ping the MongoDB and we'll check whether we're able to connect or not to the primary database, which is at 27017, not the read replica. This is the primary one, which will pass the admin command to find out whether we are able to connect to MongoDB or the MongoDB is up or not. And we will write one log to just check the Mongo connection has been established. Okay, now the other things we need to initialize is user connection, Mongo client. Okay, so this should be, sorry, this should be Mongo client. Uh, Sorry, database. Uh, I don't know why is this thing is giving me this. Okay, it should be a database name should be user db dot collection should be users. User service should be services, new user service. User collection we have to pass, and we have to pass the context. And this should be user controller, which we have to initialize user controllers dot new. We have to pass the user service, and finally we'll initialize the uh, Gin server, which will do it with the Gin default method. Okay, now this init, using init, we have defined everything here, all the objects we have created in a init function. Now let's start the server in the main function, but before that we'll also defer. Means in the defer, what we're gonna do is we'll disconnect from Mongo if the application shutdowns. Okay, so this should be context, and we'll also add the base path, and this should be version 1. uh, I'll explain you in a minute what is this group. Okay, so user collection controller dot register user routes. We'll pass the base path, and then we will run the application at 9090. Okay, so what we have done is we have here return a defer keyword to disconnect if the application shutdowns, and from the Mongo will disconnect, and this is the base path v1. So we have to call like v1 slash user slash create. Okay, this is the base path v1, and the other parts is here user slash create user slash get. Okay, so I have grouped the user routes here using route group. Okay, and the V1 is the based one. Okay, hope you understood. And why I'm not able to import the options. Let me check. Option. Okay, this should be a client. I think now I'll be able to do this. Yeah, now it has imported. Okay, so now I think we are almost done, and now let's use the Thunder client to check whether we are able to run the application correctly or not. I have the MongoDB running. Okay, right now if I check, I don't have user DB. Here I have written user DB should be present, and in that I will use the users collection, correct? This would be created when we call the API. Uh, Now first let's start the application, and we'll call the endpoints and start calling the doing the CRUD operations. Okay, this is my antivirus thing. Ignore this one. Started application at 9090. Let's see. Okay, it is listening on 9090. It has listed down all the routes like update user, get all, delete user. Okay, that seems good. Now let's create a new request. First, let's add the user. This should be localhost 9090 v1 user create. In the body, I'll pass that uh, request name should be, let's say, dev problems. Then we have age of type int, and then we have address. Let me also open the user. So that is what we are passing here, name, address, and address have state, city, and pin code. So this should be state. I'll write anything, let's say Gujarat, and city. Okay, this should be Ahmedabad. Okay, and also the last one is pin code. Okay, now let's call this one a page not found. Did we add the users or user? It's a user, right? Why do we have page not found? Oh, we have to post, sorry. So it is success. Now let's go to the MongoDB and check whether we created the database or not. Yeah, it is created. Use user DB, db dot users dot find. Okay, so information we got in a MongoDB. Now let's create a new request for get. Okay, here what we'll do is we'll copy this, paste it here, and this should be get. Here I will write the name of the user as a dev problems. We got the information. So two APIs are working fine. Now the third one is get all. So in the get all, we just have to pass this get all. Since we have only one user, we are receiving an array here, as you can see. Okay, so now we left with update and delete. Let's update our user. which is of type patch. I think this is a patch one, update one. We have written a patch. Okay. Now this should be update. Update also requires a body. So let's copy this. I will change the age as let's say 60 something. Okay, we are able to succeed and we will able to update it. So let's check. Yeah, the age is 60 now, has been updated. Now the only thing left is delete. So before deleting, I will add one more user as Sarang, and that has been added. And let's delete one of the users since we have two users now, as you can see. Get all dev problems from Sarang. Let's delete one of them. This should be delete and copy this one. Delete. Here I have to pass name as dev problems. Okay. So we are able to delete this user, and let's use get all to see whether yeah dev problems has been deleted and only Sarang user left. Okay, that is cool. Now let's check the errors if we get or not. For get all, no, let's use for update. I will pass the wrong user. Now let's say dev problem is not present. I'm trying to update. We'll get error saying no match, bad gateway, and no match document found for update. Okay, we'll use it same for delete since we don't have dev problems to delete. We got no match document found for delete. Okay, this errors we have defined over here as you can see in the user IMPL. If we don't get matched, we will use sending this message as error. Okay, I think this is pretty much it. I think you got the idea how to create a REST API using Golang Jing Web Framework, and also we have done database operations, basic CRUD operations. I think this is pretty much it, and let me know if you have any doubts. It would be little very scary if you just see it the first time, but if you just look at the code is very simple. We have created the folders according to the MVC structure. We have the controllers which holds the routes and the service which interacts with the database and fetch all the user information. We have API contracts and we have the all the initialization and everything done in the main.go file. I think this is all, and have a great day, and please subscribe to the channel and let me know what videos you need further. I'll try to create that one. And yeah, so thank you so much, and yeah, subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.